You're going to need it. Did you take the
Working.
What's your call? I'll get it up. And just Sharon said she's going to come on the phone. I sent her a note if she's not on.
No, nobody's on yet. That's what I was just checking, make sure it matches.
The Commission on Out-of-School Time Grants and Youth Outcomes is called to order at 7:03 p.m. And so we do have a public member speaking. I'd like to call Ms. Sandra Biddle. So we'd just like to remind you, since 3 minutes.
Oh, yes, I won't be there.
Great.
Hello, good evening. Thank you all for your time. I want to come here tonight to share my testimony. I'm looking for some grant funding for my foundation. And I know I could have submitted my testimony through email, but I thought that was a little impersonal. I wanted to come here so you could see my face, I could see your face. And so the name of my foundation is called the Reggie Cook Foundation. It is in honor of my son, Reggie Cook. On September 25th, 2009, my oldest son, Reggie Cook, was shot and killed on my birthday. And so that's devastating just in itself, to lose your child and to lose them on the parent's birthday. And so when my son first passed away, so many people were coming to me telling me, your son helped me get a job, he helped me fix my car, he was like really, really a good person for the community and doing a lot of great things for other people. And so from that, I've always told myself, when my son first passed away on my birthday, I said I would never celebrate my birthday again. It was just so sad for me to have that time. And so just from different people coming up to me and telling me what a good person he was. And my son wasn't perfect. He had his share of bad dealings. He did some time in prison before he passed away. And so even with that, he helped people in jail. When he was in there, he helped some guys with their case. And so just from people telling me how good a guy he was and how he helped them get jobs and, you know, move and help fix their cars. And, you know, even the Washington Post wrote this article on him and said a good Samaritan, because of that good Samaritan, talking about my son jumping up. He jumped up and grabbed the gun from the guys. And they said if he didn't do that, so many other guys would have gotten shot that night. And so I want to just get back to the kids. I'm from Ward 8. I was born and raised in Southeast, and my son tragically lost his life in Berry Farms in Southeast, where he was born and raised. And so I love Southeast. That's where I'm from, and my church is in Southeast. I go to the Temple of Praise, where Bishop Lene Staples and Pastor Walter Lamar Staples. I'm always in Southeast. I just started my dance team where I get back to the young girls, and I want to do ultimately a dance camp just to strengthen the girls and encourage them and let them know that they are beautiful, that they are loved. And I just love my community. I just love Southeast, and that's why I'm here tonight, just to see what I can do to get funding for my mentoring camp and just to honor my son in his absence. Thank you so much for your time. And I wrote a book about it. It's called Victorious.
Thank you.
Can we ask if anyone has questions?
Sure. Does anyone have questions?
I do. How many girls are in your program?
Right now I have 7.
Yeah. What ages?
They are between the ages of 3 to 8.
Okay. And it's purely dance, or what's this mentoring you discussed?
It's a dance group where we do teach them about self-love, discipline. We teach them that, you know, they are beautiful no matter what their shape and size is. We teach them about nutrition, how to, you eat proper fruits and vegetables. Because a lot of kids in that area don't even eat vegetables or fruit. So I remember I had one little girl, and I asked her, did she eat fruit? She said no, she doesn't eat fruit. And I understood why. I didn't even ask her why. So we just teach them different things like that about health and wealth and, just different things about they are beautiful and they are loved.
Yeah, Ms. Biddle, sorry for your loss. So how often you meet with the young ladies?
We just meet every Saturday right now from 10 to 12.
And does that increase during the summer hours?
Yes, I would like to do a full camp program Monday through Friday from 6 to 6, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. with them.
And one last question. Is your organization incorporated?
Yes.
501c3?
Yes, it is.
Awesome.
Yes. Thank you.
And have you met with Deborah from the OST office yet about the grant competitions?
I spoke with her about it.
We'll follow up after.
Thank you. All right, so it looks like we're at quorum, so we're going to move into the roll call. We have someone on the phone?
Yeah, Bernal Holland is here.
Okay, great, welcome. So Commissioner Henderson?
Here.
Great. Commissioner Berkey?
Present.
Commissioner Brown?
So, yeah, Miles.
Oh, Miles Cliff is here? Yeah. Oh, great. Welcome. Commissioner Crosby?
Here.
And Commissioner Clark will be calling in on the phone. Commissioner Garrido? Commissioner Harding?
Present.
Great. Commissioner Hill? Commissioner Hecker?
Good.
And Commissioner Holland is on the phone. Commissioner O'Neill? Great. Commissioner Gillett?
Here.
Commissioner Siegel?
Here.
All right. Okay, so Commissioners, I now ask you to review and motion to approve the agenda.
Seconded.
I'll also, Kenneth and Jason, since you're still waiting for council approval, I'm just gonna have to abstain for the votes for now. And Laura Harding will also be filling the commission seat for the Deputy Mayor of Education, so we welcome her, as well as Commissioner Crosby is going to be stepping down, so just wanted to make sure to mention that. So we'd like to thank her for her service.
Thank you.
So now if we can take a look at the agenda.
So do you need a second for the approval of the agenda?
Yeah, we need a motion for it.
Oh, the motion.
Great.
I seconded.
Okay.
Mark seconded.
Perfect. Any discussion on the agenda? Okay. Those who approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Those who oppose, please say aye.
Aye.
Is that for approve or oppose?
That was for approval, sorry.
Okay. Motion carries with unanimous voting.
Which would have been a weird flex.
Okay, a draft version of the minutes are provided. Are there any changes or revisions needed? And if there are no changes, if we can please get a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Hecker, motion to approve the minutes. Any second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Burke. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, those who approve the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Those who oppose the minutes, please say aye. Okay. Those who abstain, please say aye. Okay, the motion carries with unanimous approval. But we can now have the updates on the office.
Yes, so you have a handout with our updates. We have no slides to show you this month. And so I will just provide an update when the team will step in. But the only update I have is that the Office of the DC Auditor continues. They are actually currently drafting the report, so we should have something to share maybe by the next commission, depending on the timing. So they are currently in that drafting of the report phase. That's all I can share.
Thank you.
And then,
Sorry.
yeah.
How has your relationship been with the auditor through this process?
Oh, it's been fine from our office. In terms of, we've been really responsive in getting information to them. So the team that's doing the audit, I mean, everyone on our team has given the information as needed. So it's been longer than expected. And they've gone, I think, deeper than they normally would since we're a new office. So they did really look at our first year of grants. So they actually audited some of our sub-grantees as well.
Okay.
Any questions related, other questions? If not, we'll share, I mean, once the report is public, we'll share with the commission.
Yes, I do have a question. So is the audit, is it something that's done annually for every
So, yeah,
DC
that's a great question.
Office?
So it was required in legislation that the DC auditor conduct an audit of our office within the first 2 years of forming, and then every 5 years thereafter.
Okay.
So it is legislated.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I'm just curious if that's a higher level of oversight than normal. Again, is
That
in
I
legislation, is that more common than other offices?
That's a great question, and I don't know the answer. I can look into it. I don't know if you have any insight.
My understanding is it probably came about as
The history.
the history of pre-Learn 24. But we can discuss what happens later.
Any other questions? Alex?
All right, and so right now we're in the process of advertising or publicizing the ability for taxpayer support to, for the public to make DC residents to make a contribution to support taxpayer support. So we have a little blurb that's in the OST Commission updates. And if you can share that with your networks, we're also in the process of working with Octo to get a landing page to put on our website. That way we can have even more information about how to contribute to the taxpayer support or to the fund. And then last year we received $117,000 and that money was issued to support grants at public housing communities as well as DHS sites.
And just for public transparency, we actually received more than that last year, but that was the total in fiscal year 19. So the fund was created last year, so there were some funds that had just been sitting there from previous, until the law changed, until things happened. So then we received, I think, a little over $200,000 total last year that went to grants.
So, Alex, 117,000 went to DCHA sites specifically?
No, in combination, it was DCHA and DHS sites, the grants.
Okay. So, can you share with me a little bit, what was the funds used for on the DCHA sites specifically?
So it was 2 grants that were issued. The 2 grants, and I'm sorry I don't have the breakdown with me right now, but the 2 grants went to Woodland Terrace and Lincoln Heights, those communities.
So it was for the year-round coordinating entity model at the DCHA locations at Woodland Terrace and Lincoln Heights. So typically we fund their summer program with the additional funds, and some of our additional grant dollars, we increased it in order to do a year-round programming at those 2 DCHA locations. So we wanted to make sure it was kind of restricted and very supporting the most at-risk youth. What was that?
No, I just would have thought.
I just didn't want to speculate. That's what I'm saying. Thank you.
All right, so just a couple updates. We're kind of in the middle still of our quality improvement process for this year, but we are maintaining 34 sites, which is 4 above our goal of 30 for this fiscal year. We're excited too because we're kind of building our local network now. So we have 2 of our local trainers that's been trained to deliver the Planning with Data workshop, which we just completed in January, and then the quality coaching workshop, which will be at the end of this month as well. Programs are in the middle of doing their program improvements plans right now, and then we're continuing to provide technical assistance between our trainers that are also external assessors that are certified through WICART as well. So we're excited about that. We hosted a networking event for OST professionals on January 10th over at the UDC Van Ness campus. It was really well received. Folks really enjoyed the activities, so we kind of had structured activities for them in the networking opportunities, and they definitely want more of that. So might try to think of infusing something like that even in the summer conference as well, so we can keep that momentum going. And just for first quarter, in regards to our overall goals, we've already provided 26 events and have already served over 377 unduplicated attendees. So we're already well ahead of our overall goal for the year as well. So we're excited about that. And below, there's a ton of workshops and events that we have listed just for everyone to take a look at as well. That's it.
Any questions for Kevin?
Okay, moving on to grants. So the fiscal year 2019 annual grant report was released and is available at the link on this page. Feel free to review, let us know. The school year 2019-2020, we're in the middle of obviously programming. There are 89 current grantees. That breaks down to 26 year-round grantees, 35 continuation, 7 for the school year 1920 that applied that school year, and 21 small nonprofit. They are programming to date 4,523 youth. And there's baseline data for the SAO assessments. The Jeremy, what?
We've collected 861 survey responses. So in the fall, these would be for new participants to programs or for new grantees to get sort of baseline values.
And what does SAO stand for again?
Survey of Academic Youth Outcomes.
For summer 2020, announcements are tentatively scheduled for the end of this month. There were 65 applications that were reviewed. And for school year 2021, there are 16 current continuation grantees that will need to reapply next year because they went through 3 years of continuation, and this is the year that they will need to reapply. And those applications are going to be released in March. We're staggering those with after conversations with OSSI because the 21st Century grants are being released approximately at the same time. So we've already been in conversation to coordinate and align those and stagger them. So it gives providers an opportunity to prepare, and we've already announced that in our newsletter to let people know that these are both coming down at approximately the same time, so to try and plan accordingly. Any questions?
Great. If there are no questions, we can move on to our committee updates. So Commissioner Hill, would you like to provide us with an update on the funding capacity building committee?
Okay. We met a couple of times, actually met yesterday at the beginning, Heights Neighborhood Library, and we're still in a lot of discussion. One of the things that we talked a lot about yesterday was references in terms of the grant making process. Were the references actually valid? How will the references that are submitted in the application actually strengthen the proposals? So we're going to continue that conversation at our next meeting. There's a lot of conversations about that. We also looking into what other agencies are using with regard to the references that they require for their grant making process. So again, we're going to continue our conversations in that area. Talked a little bit about Mala shared some great information about sharing information on the Google sheet. And she's going to be filling this in. We didn't really finish conversations about that. We also talked about old grants in terms of did we want to publish old grants so new applicants could look at the previous grants that were submitted. And just in terms of the application process, we haven't finished our conversations on that. And then we also talked a little bit about, I don't know, Miles, you want me to talk about the TAC, Technical Assistance Corps, that was introduced to us, and certainly will yield to Marla if you want to ask me a lot of questions. Technicality of what that aspect of, and I think that you maybe should talk a little bit about that. Marla, you do a much better job than I do, but they're interested, and we gave them good feedback with regard to the people, the commissioners, and our representatives from Office of State Superintendent's Office. So yesterday, that we thought it was a good idea to implement something like that or have continued conversations about the Technical Assistance Corps, which will come in and help our funded grantors with technical assistance. Just a real brief.
Yeah, so the idea is that we would look at hiring consultants to perform a technical assistance corps to help not just grantees, but even those who are applying for our grants on specific questions. So we know capacity building has been an issue, and we've been trying to generate ideas from this committee in particular, how to support the nonprofits with what they're doing, and sort of looking at what could be done without giving grants directly to nonprofits for capacity building, because we can't right now. Is looking at hiring the corps that can then work individually with applicants or grantees on issues from internal controls or fundraising and issues they may have on board governance. So it's a little bit more technical assistance on whatever they need related to our grant. So the first year would be a pilot to see what are the topics and key things people are requesting. Just to see and kind of leave it broad, but they have to be youth serving. There'll be some general boundaries, has to be DCU, things like that. Just so that we can see what the asks are, what do people need, because we've done the assessment, we're doing the small capacity building program, so we thought this one would be broad enough for the whole system as we think about the type of assistance needed, but it's so broad that we thought this was an idea that we would then start to look at. So we are now currently in the phase of the committee like the idea, so we're going to look for a technical assistance partner to help manage this corps.
Awesome.
Any questions?
Thank you. And that was something that we felt would be helpful when we had discussed it yesterday. It's really quickly, another issue was the summer meal programs on DCHA properties during the summer, not on DCHA, DPR, and other sites, DC Public Schools. We are having continued conversations with, providers, and we look at the best way nutritionally to support the youth that we serve. That conversation will continue. And then we talked a little bit about the United Way coming in and making a presentation. again, that conversation is gonna continue. We haven't hashed that all out in terms of what they would present, what type of questions we would ask them. We didn't wanna waste their time in terms of having it too broad. So we need to narrow down just exactly what type of conversations that they would bring to be productive to this room. I think they came before and it was mentioned that they gave a very powerful, beautiful speech about how great they're doing. And so we didn't want to invite them back for them to tell us, toot their own horn again. So I think that we just would need to develop some type of questions in terms of the work that they do, their management style. Anyway, we need to figure all that out. And we also met, and I know Commissioner Pillar was there when we met in January 14th, and we're still working obviously on a strategic plan, and we set some more dates, a lot of conversation about that. We amended some things, set some dates. We're going to revisit several of the topics that we talked about. Some of the things that we mentioned in January, we also talked about yesterday, which I just mentioned. And so we're just continuing to have those conversations. I don't know if you want to add in anything from January.
Yeah, feels like ages ago.
I know it does. I don't remember either. I can remember yesterday a little better, so I'm pretty good with yesterday. That's about it.
That's a good summary.
All right, thank you for the update.
Thank you.
Any questions from anyone? Great. Commissioner Hecker, if you could now update us on the Outcomes Committee.
Sure. We met on January 17th and did finalize our portion of the work plan, though recognizing it's a living document, there will likely be continued edits to it, but started digging into some of the tactics and sort of quickly realized that many of the individual tactics also will require sub-work plans, so another level to this madness. We do think we'll start by trying to sort of inventory what data is currently available from different agencies across the city. Milo was pretty clear she didn't just want us asking everyone for everything, so we're going to see what's available first rather than start requesting things, but think that in-school attendance may be a place to start because there is some good data available. We also expect to dig into the 12 developmental outcomes that were used sort of in the old system and see whether we think they need a refresh for consideration for current grantees and how we might be able to move that forward. One of the elephants in the room that sort of keeps coming up and we know we'll have to dig into in the coming months is how can the office assess the grantees and talk about that in a way that doesn't immediately scare every grantee about the fact that there will be some sort of assessment in place. So we know we'll have to dig into that. And our next step for our next meeting, which is on the 21st, is actually digging into some of that work planning and say what are we actually trying to accomplish during 2020. So we hope that will be part of the conversation in the next meeting.
Thank you for the update.
Okay.
Any questions?
Jeremy or Jason want to add anything, they're welcome to. My summary.
I like to call it accountability versus assessing our grantees, just for the record.
And the fact that I just said that is one of the reasons we need to talk about it, so we get our language together, so we don't scare anyone.
Okay. And Commissioner Gerdo, were you willing to be the chair of the Coordination and Collaboration Committee?
Sure. I know Milo was really eager to say that.
Would you also be willing to provide an update?
Oh, yeah. So we met in January, and we're still trying to move towards eventually getting to like I don't want to say standard partner agreement but just something that could allow organizations to apply to multiple agencies and just hopefully cut down some barriers and red tape that organizations have for getting into some agencies. So we're still, working towards that, but we want to have a meeting maybe in April about the referral process, developing like a referral network for warm handoffs, so that, you know, kids are continuing to get service throughout their phases in life and different changes in life and things like that. So I don't know, we don't really know what that's gonna look like yet, but I'm sure it'll be really nice. And then the last thing is, just the resource list, like just trying to find, develop like a list. And we'll obviously would want to talk to the funding and capacity building group, but just developing a resource list for funding for organizations too that they can go to. And I think we also want to, along with the first thing that I talked about like a standard agreement or something like that, a succession plan, or just trying to help organizations know who to speak to in these different agencies that we talk about. So even if that person leaves, like just the position or the office they should refer to. I think that's it. Did I leave anything out? Alex?
No, and just to make the connection, so the Google document Commissioner Hill was talking about is that resource document that we and the Quality Committee has reviewed. So all of the committees are slowly looking at this Google document, which is the resource list. So as the resource list, we're asking for anyone in the network and on the committee to add links to where they can find a possible good source for that resource, that document. So it could be a data sharing agreement, a board succession plan. So there was a whole list generated by the committee. Now we're looking for the resources to match it. At the same time, Alex on the OST office team is looking for how do we then present this on a website that any organization can then start to realize there's a hub in DC to have access to this information. But we wanted to make it easy, so we're still trying to figure that piece out.
And thank you for agreeing to step up.
Being voluntold. But yeah. No, it's fine. I'm excited.
Commissioner Berkey, could you please provide us with the update on the Quality Committee?
So the Quality Committee met on January 27th, and we think that we have had the final conversation about the quality statements, which you all have seen so many times before. This time we're looking at feedback that had been collected from over 50 parents and just over 30 youth about the two different statements, and those were collected through online surveys and in person at EdFest and other events, and by meeting up with youth. And we did, the teen quality statement, which you see up on the screen, was left unchanged because of the tremendously positive support for the wording as it stood. But there were comments provided by parents that we thought we should address, and so we did make 2 changes in the language, so that what you now see is somewhat different from the previous version. In the previous version, quality programs provide children with activities that bring joy and learning and build character with dedicated staff who, the previous word was protect, rather than engage. And now you see every child in place of all children, because the terminology every child is more responsive and inclusive, especially of children with special needs. Am I capturing everything? Okay. So we wanted to present these statements to the full commission tonight in hopes that they would be approved by everyone. I'm not sure what the process is for that, but
just an informal vote.
Yeah. Okay.
So any comments about those statements? Okay, all right. So we have a motion to approve the first statement.
A motion.
Thank you. Any seconds?
A second.
Okay. Those who approve the first statement, please say aye.
Aye.
Those who oppose? Okay. Are there any that abstain? Okay, it looks like it approves unanimously. Nice.
Thank you.
On to the second statement. Those who approve, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Any who oppose?
Aye.
Is that for approve or oppose?
I definitely approve.
Okay. So it sounds like both statements approved unanimously, so congratulations.
Fabulous. Oh, the committee has now achieved something. So we do have a few other updates though. And so one of them is that one of the projects that we wanted to see is a youth assessor corps where we would be working with a cadre of about 16 youth who would do kind of external assessments using the Weichert program quality assessment. They would be identified in the coming months, trained during the summer, and then conduct the assessment starting next fall. And we are looking for a partner organization to kind of operate as the recruiter and manager of those youth, and they would be paid stipends through that organization. So I believe Mila has identified a few organizations that may be interested in that type of work, and any other recommendations could be directed toward Mila. We also addressed the landscape document, which you've heard about in the previous meeting. It's a collection of all of the training programs that exist that we know about in areas of youth development, health and wellness, restorative justice, social emotional learning, and management. And there are now approximately 160 different training programs that are in that roster. It's constantly being added to as new information comes our way. And so any ideas and updates for that document would go to Kevin. It's hoped that we will soon get it posted on the website so that organizations can begin to use it as an Excel file that they can sort of edit and see. You know, if you want only the youth development training programs, you can just select those and so on. You've also probably noticed in the current Learn 24 newsletter that we've now included promising practices that are coming out, I guess, monthly.
Yes.
And those are based on the Weichert program quality assessment as well. They're looking at, they're giving little infusions of what program quality looks like as it pertains to the assessment instrument. And last, we are looking for some potential partners to provide training in two highly sought after content areas. One is working with children with special needs, and the other one is trauma-informed care. So anyone who may know of organizations that do that type of work, please refer those organizations to Kevin's attention so that he can do some outreach, and we can talk to them about providing training to after-school, youth-serving organizations. And our next meeting is going to be at the Shaw Library on March 23rd from 1 to 3.
Great. Thanks for the update.
Yep.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, sounds good. The next item, if you look through your packets, we have a feasibility report to share with you. So this report is a draft response to legislation about expanding the role of the commission and the office. Last time we met, we discussed and decided against expansion of the commission and office and requested that the OST office draft our response. So my ask to the commission now are, what are your initial thoughts on this draft report, and what, if anything, needs to be added to it, and what may be missing?
I like it. I think it's simple, it's to the point, it captures all of the important things. It's good to see the cross-agency coordination and collaboration, as well as see the vision and the values up front, so people are reminded of the work and what's fueling the work. And yeah, it's impressive.
Thank you for the feedback.
I thought it did a good job of capturing the engagement with all different types of organizations in the city.
well, I didn't see here, but was your,
Hello?
you have a lot of cross-agency coordination.
Hello?
Where do you, sorry, where do you have this stuff where you capture your engagement with?
Hi,
the
it's Anna.
community?
Okay, thank you, welcome.
Engagement, sorry, with the community.
Thanks.
Yeah, so in the report, we did not address the engagement with community, so Commissioner Harding was talking about sort of what's missing. We did the report because this is in particular to a response in legislation with the need to increase coordination across agencies, so it didn't really, the ask to legislation, so that's the letter in the very front that references it. And they actually identify specific agencies in legislation. And so we focused more on the cross-agency work versus, but we're happy to add that if the commission thinks that we should add the additional engagement with the community.
Needs reference here towards a certain letter. I just think you all do a lot of work with that, and I mean, you note it here, but yeah.
In the recommendation section, it references an interest in community for collaboration with Octave. I'm kind of just curious about what that would look like. Why Octave is on the list and what that potentially look like.
Yeah, so Octo actually runs youth programs. They have a program called Spark, and it's part of under Connect DC, which is, I think, the program name, and where they actually they contract and work with vendors to deliver tech programming to kids. So they run it over the summer. So again, like people don't know, like there are a ton of agencies for learning that run youth programs beyond what was identified in legislation. And they were very interested in the network and what we were doing and training. So we've got, I mean, this happened, I know, a couple weeks ago. So they were very active and they're like, tell us who you're using. We want to build and see what vendors are out there and thinking about digital training for youth and sort of STEM. So we shared a couple of our vendors with them and we'll see what will happen as part of the partnership.
Thank you for that. And just as a broad comment, I think the recommendation to not try and consolidate all this under the youth of the OST office is right. I know we've been discussed before, but I think for that to happen in an effective and efficient way, there's got to be a much bigger conversation about staffing and resources exponentially growing from where they're at, and just being clear on what the goals would be from trying to do that kind of collective oversight.
Thank you.
I have a question for you guys. I think it looks good in general and am happy with it now. There's a phrase in the recommendation that says at this time, like collaborating with these additional ones would dilute our work at this time, and I'm curious if you actually believe that or if we could just say it would dilute the work, period. So are you trying to say we might actually do this later?
Yeah, so I left it in because the commission at this time may, and we don't know if the environment will change, but I'm happy to take out that language. When we were drafting this, they're like, do we make it permanent and this is it? Or, with this commission, then reconsider it at some point.
So I'm less interested in the language, I'm actually interested in what you think. So do you imagine a time when you'd be like, yeah, bring those other ones in?
I think it may be, like, part of it may not all of them at once, that legislation, but I can see at some point, like, one of those agencies coming on board to partner with us.
Gotcha.
Right?
Okay.
So we've had some early conversations with RSA, and I don't remember what agency that falls under. And so there are potential, but to like try to coordinate with all of them that are listed in legislation right now would totally dilute the work. So I think there could be times, depending on if we do a lot of work with trauma-informed training and care, we may then be more intentional with working with DBH and want to know what are your programs. So I left it vague in that sense, just so that there is room for us to, like, as the need is defined and how the network decides to grow.
Then I think that makes sense, and I would only offer that we might want to add language to that effect. That, like, when alignment exists,
Got it.
we will explore future collaboration, rather than just saying not now. You know, I think that makes the office look proactive and say we're looking for partnership opportunities when they're the right ones.
We can do that.
Plus one to that.
Yep.
I think he was just agreeing.
Okay.
And if it's not, that's what I'm going to put in the record.
Any additional feedback or suggestions? Okay.
Okay, so we will make some final edits. We will send this electronically. That'll be voted on in April. We'll miss the deadline just by a little bit, but that's sort of the timing. Then we'll do a public vote on it. So it's been shared today in terms of trying to get it out there.
Okay, great. So we'll ask the OST office to proceed with submitting the report with those small changes. And thank you all for the discussion and great work over the last 2 years with the commission. And are there any additional comments or business to discuss? Okay. All right. The next public meeting is April 9th, 2020, the same place, same time. Now may I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Any second? Thank you, Commissioner Hill seconds the motion. Any discussion? Those who approve the adjournment, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any who oppose? Those who abstain, please say aye.
No, it's not me.
The motion carries with unanimous approvals. Meeting is adjourned at 7:50 p.m. Thank you all for your time.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
It was still nice like it was a little while ago.